That's a beautiful question. Thank you so much. That's very interesting because the concept of living unmuted appeared in my entrepreneurial journey a year ago, a year and a half ago. In my personal journey with overweight, I've always been someone that didn't really know how to deal with her emotions. I've always had big emotions. I'm extremely joyful and I'm also extremely sad. When we allow all the parts of us to be present, nothing is held inside. It's like when you try to put a ball underwater. Yes, you keep it down, you keep it down, you keep it down. What is it going to be doing? It's only going to be, it's not only what my mind wants. What does life dictate me that my relationship should look like in a year's time? We need support to create space for us. It's like if at the beginning of a meditation, you don't tell someone to take a breath, probably they won't be conscious about it. When you do a visualization, if you don't offer the idea that someone can be there are two concepts that are very important that are related to leadership. Well, one, the base is radical responsibility. I have been up until now focusing mainly on women entrepreneurs.
Welcome to Mind Body Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Devi Sundar, an integrative mind body consultant. So many of us spend our lives trying to become someone else, healthier, stronger, more successful, more confident. We focus on changing our habits, our appearance, our circumstances, hoping that transformation will finally bring us peace. But what if the lasting change doesn't begin with doing more? What if it begins with remembering who we truly are beneath that expectation, the roles, the stories we have been carrying for so long? Today's conversation is about moving beyond survival and into the life of authenticity, presence, and embodied leadership. It's about finding the courage to reclaim your voice, reconnect with your body, and create that space to live in alignment with your deepest truth. I'm delighted to welcome Ghislaine Albina to this podcast. Ghislaine is the founder of Living Unmuted, a movement dedicated to helping women reclaim their voice, their power, and their inner sovereignty. Her work is deeply rooted in lived experience. After transforming her own life, losing weight, rebuilding her identity, and breaking free from years of expectation and self limiting beliefs, she discovered true transformation isn't simply about changing how we look, it's about changing how we live, how we lead, and how we honor ourselves. Today, Ghislaine supports women to step out of the autopilot into aligned, authentic self expression through a powerful blend of embodied leadership, intuitive wisdom, and radical self responsibility. Our mission is to help women to stop silencing themselves and start living from a place of authenticity, what she beautifully calls living unmuted. In today's conversation, we'll explore Jesline's personal journey, the healing power of embodiment, what it truly means to claim your voice, and how creating moments of pause, listen, and to be witnessed can become catalyst for profound transformation. We'll also explore a wheel of expansion framework, a framework that helps women meet themselves with compassion while growing into a fullest expression of who they are. Whether you're navigating illness, recovering from burnout, searching for an authentic voice, or simply longing to live with a greater purpose and presence, I believe you'll find inspiration, practical wisdom, and gentle encouragement in this conversation. Please join me in welcoming Ghislaine Albina. Hello, Ghislaine. Welcome to my podcast, and it's a great pleasure to have you here after being myself as a guest on your podcast in May, I think, this year. And you had a beautiful title for it and released at the end of last month. And at that time of release, I was away at a conference, but I happened to watch it. Came out very beautifully. And thank you for giving that space to talk about my professional and some parts of my personal as well, which I'm not a very open person. So I really appreciate that. It came well when I watched back when you published that one. So thank you very much for that. And also a big thank you to accepting my invitation to be my guest on my podcast here. And our podcast is all about mind and body, and it's very well aligned with your work, what you do there. And especially when I asked you the bio, she provided the Living Unmuted is your podcast, am I right? And the title itself is so creating that curiosity. What does Living Unmuted means? And what is the work you're doing? And I just wanted to let all the people know as much as possible who watch this podcast or hear this podcast. So I would love to begin by, before the work Living Unmuted existed, what is the woman you were that led to this work and the transformation, what you went through? If you could take us through that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this beautiful introduction, Devi. It was a pleasure to have you on my podcast, and it was an honor to have you opening up a little bit more about the processes that led you to this wonderful business that you have and the wonderful book that you wrote to support so many people. So I think it's amazing work. And
Thank you.
thank you for your first question. It's it's very much a question that is in line with what I do and what living unmuted is. So the woman that Ghislaine was before she started to live unmutingly or unmuting herself, I've always been very much outgoing and outspoken, and I've always really enjoyed bringing myself forward as the person, the woman that I was. But I've also had always a lot of insecurities. I was overweight when I was young. I was bullied, and I lived in many different countries. My father was a pilot, so we moved around together with him, which created for me a system, or it created something in my system where there was not enough grounding. And because of that, I couldn't really know and discover who I was. And so I tended to look a lot at the outside world to create a reflection of who I was. But when you are bullied and when you have people in a school and, children can be very mean to each other, that created a lot of insecurities that for me resulted in a lot of weight gain, weight loss, weight gain, weight loss, and hyper focus on this image of me. And at a later age, I took myself through all kind of processes. I went for certifications, and I tried to create a persona based on what I had achieved. And at one point, I realized that that was just bringing me as far as the world would allow me. And then I needed to conform to some of the aspects that the world created for us. And so I guess that the person that I was before living unmuted came out was a person that tried a lot of things to bring herself out of her shell, and then walked against the wall again and again and again and again, until that moment in time that I couldn't walk anymore against that wall, because I was just, I think desperate is maybe the right word. I was really so desperate to be my authentic self, and I completely crashed down. And then no, I wanted to say survival, but I mean revival happened. It's maybe the good way to say that. So that's a very short summary of who that person was. Yeah.
Great, and thank you for sharing your journey. And so I hear that you've lost some of your body weight, and because it was actually being criticized by other people, so you felt that your identity was not perceived in a good shape or form by people in your school, and that led to transformation. It's so interesting to hear, and it is a real thing because just because I didn't share in my podcast, I was also actually a little obese when I was a little child, like in Indian way, like we eat a lot of ghee and those sort of things, and like I was so chubby. That's the word we use in India, so to describe a person who's obese. And so I did experience similar kind of ways of thing, and as you say, like I was outspoken as well, but that doesn't actually help me in the way when someone is pointing at you, like you are like this, you cannot be outspoken at that time. It's because that's the pain. And you go into that the victim mindset, like, oh, so I'm not good and they're not looking at good. And what is that wrong with me? So that's so how did you come out? Because it's all about you today. I don't want to share a lot about myself, but I did come through with difficulties, and then that made me more stronger in speaking up my truth more, another thing. So, how did the point, or when did the point in time in your life you felt that transformation inside you to connect with your inner voice and inner truth rather than looking at others' expectation? When did you start living with your own inner truth?
I think it's been a journey. So it's been something that some seeds were planted along the way, I discovered yoga. After my mom passed away, that's 16 years ago, I went
Sorry
into
to
a
hear that.
depression. I went into a depression, and someone suggested go do yoga. It will make you, zen again. And so I did, which had a complete opposite effect because I was in a class and I needed to shove my body in a certain posture, and I would just wanted to explode. So that didn't work, but I did go to another yoga class, and I found a teacher that actually allowed me to come into the yoga posture in the way that was the most aligned for me. So instead of teaching me those are the postures and you need to find a way to get into them, she taught
Mhm.
me this is the most ideal posture, and where is your body and your mind at now? What works the best for you? And that was absolutely amazing. And this, I think this has been something that I, up until now, keep on reminding myself. This is the most ideal thing, and what is available for me, for my mind, for my body, for my emotions at this moment. So it created a system, or it created a world for me where it wasn't about reaching perfection based on what the outside world dictates, but it was based on what is the most perfect for me so that I can take that step forward, so that I can relax in that posture, so that I can become Zen thanks to yoga, which was the expectation at that moment. And I think that was the start of, the first seed that was planted. And then along the way, a few years later, I started my entrepreneurial journey. And when I did that, and that I really chose to step forward into the world as an entrepreneur, it just changed the way you look at the world, because you are forced to do things in a different way. There's no system anymore that you can rely on. There is a part of a system, but it's a complete different way of standing in the world. And so I think entrepreneurship has been one of the greatest enlightening experience of my life.
Agree, 100% agree that. Yeah.
And then based on that, different seeds were planted, and I just kept on feeding them, giving them water, and letting it grow into my life.
Great, great. Because you said that entrepreneurship is the way that led you to a greater change in your life and able to speak your own voice, and that transformation happened. And you mentioned that 2 years ago. I totally agree with that part because 5 years ago I started my own practice as well, and I was actually open and I started to speak up my own truth long before that, but still leading something, whatever you've been doing for the past, when I started, now it's over 23 years, but I started, so it was actually like around 19 years or something of experience. And you started with that. And you are speaking your truth, but who's there to listen? Who's the customer going to take? For that, you have to think a lot in the shoes of the customer. It's about more of the empathy here plays out by understanding what your customer needs are rather than more towards the kindness words. It's more of the way you think, the empathy, the frame label of empathy, and how you offer people. And when it comes to living unmuted, your work, what are you doing? I work with people with chronic illnesses, and there might be people with other traumas, being living for years and years muted in their life. Yeah, and or someone who's not putting themselves first, just putting others first. Those are all actually not helping them to speak their inner voice and living in a muted state. So, how would you actually? I want you to really test your interventions here. What would you offer to people? How would you make them to live unmuted through your programs?
That's a beautiful question. Thank you so much. That's very interesting because the concept of living unmuted appeared in my entrepreneurial journey a year ago, a year and a half ago. And I, up until then, I had been creating programs and master classes, really in the traditional way of doing things and doing a business. And living unmuted really came as a definition of how I was living my life. And I believe that most of us tend to keep ourselves small in a muted state. So it's not only about the voice, but it's also the state where we are in. We do not allow our emotions to truly be present. We do not allow our grief to truly be present. Our thoughts, sometimes I can have a very negative thought about something, and the good girl says, it's like there's all those person around me. The good girl says, oh, you shouldn't be thinking like this. And so I'm again and again and again putting myself down and making myself small. When I started to truly live unmuted was when I just allowed all the parts of me to be present without denying any of those aspects. Now, that doesn't mean that I go around on the street telling people that I think they are wearing ugly shoes, or me being mean, or, that's not what I mean with being unmuted. It's just when we allow all the parts of us to be present, nothing is held inside. It's like when you try to put a ball underwater. Yes, you keep it down, you keep it down, you keep it down. What is it going to be doing? It's only going to be to explode at one time. It wants to come out, which is the same with everything that we sense and that we feel or that we think. If we just allow it to be present in our field, then there's no attachment to it anymore. And negative thought patterns about myself mainly go away. And then the opinion that I have on somebody's shoes is just an opinion. It's not important. It's just present in the big scheme of all the things that are present. And so living unmuted, if I would, just invite someone to start the journey of unmuting themselves, unmuting their voice, is take a journal and write every single thing that enters your mind. Every emotion, which also enter your heart, every thought, every feeling, every little thing that you think you need to suppress, that you need to keep small, write them all down, put them away, give them back to freedom, and then see what happens.
Okay, that's a good tip. Thank you for that. I was about to ask some simple tip at the end, but you might need to give another tip at the end as well. But that's the thank you for the journaling part. And I love the example what you actually mentioned there about putting the ball in and then pushing it through the water and the ball bounces off. It gives me an idea, like where the weight of the ball determines how quickly the ball is going to bounce out, or it's going to be lighter floating on the water. And I think that the weight is actually more in exchange of in practical life, the shame, the guilt, the fear, the anxiety the people hold, how much ever they hold. For example, you mentioned about being bullied with a weight, and say me, like when I was in school. So that shame we held in ourselves and the fear of speaking out about us, and then the world around us is showcasing the beauty, the slimness of the people as a beauty, and not the shape what we have, the obesity. And we are actually having this mindset of all the emotions, the fear, shame, or guilt, which comes with a negative emotion, as you mentioned earlier. And how to actually reduce that weight of the emotion is through your journey of living unmuted. Is one way is to do the journaling. And I also came across in your website earlier something like around the moment to listen, moment to transform, those lines. And when we are talking about people, not only people with chronic illnesses, but normal people, in a sense, we all have some kind of ailment of negative mental health, emotions, and other things. So when I actually very cautiously wanted to use the word normal people, okay, so people who don't have chronic illnesses, maybe I'll put it down that way. So when we talk about people having to go through this journey of living unmuted and using journaling as one thing, what do you mean by moment to listen, moment to transform? And I also wanted to link up, it's a very big question, link up your practice of yoga, because you went through that journey of transformation through yoga, and I've been a yoga teacher as well myself. So the moment of pausing and connecting, more focusing on the breath and the mind and what it does to our body. I want to hear from your words.
Thank you. Thank you for also taking the time to read my words and my thoughts on my website, which really gives a complete view of my idea about what we're talking about. We're talking about transformation. And I truly believe that action is needed in order to transform. So, yes, there is the part where we need to understand what is happening, understand our patterns, learn from from the mind, learn and understand. That's the cognitive part of it. And
Mm,
then we need to take action, because understanding what we did wrong is not going to transform our lives. I believe that our habits, our emotions, our patterns are anchored in our doing. So doing
mm,
things in a certain way. I think that the easiest example that I can give you, I'll share my personal journey with overweight. I've always been someone that didn't really know how to deal with her emotions. I've always had big emotions. I'm extremely joyful and I'm also extremely sad. So, and I didn't really know how to transmute those emotions. So I tended to go towards food, a lot of sugary, sweet foods. And at one point in my journey, when connecting to my body, thanks to yoga, I learned to understand what was happening in my system, when which emotions were guiding me towards what kind of foods. But the understanding of that and the feeling of what was happening wasn't enough to transform the habits, because there is also a habit. It's a habit to grab food. It's a habit to go to the supermarket and buy chocolates. And so for me, in a very practical way, I chose to do an operation. I had 10 years ago, I had a gastric bypass operation because I couldn't, on my, just with me and my system, I needed support to really change those habits. So I chose for
mm.
an operation. And after that, I noticed that one of my habits was to go to stations. Whenever
Sorry, say it again. Facial. Is that, did I hear facial?
yeah, station. So I'm going to explain a little bit. You know where you put gas into the car? How is that called in English?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
Fuel station.
yeah, so what I used to do is when I used to travel from point A to point B, I had a route. I knew the way that would go exactly to those stations that would sell the things that I preferred. The kind of chocolate that I love, the kind of sweets that I love, the kind of coffee that I loved. And so I knew exactly I'm going to go there, but in my habits and my system was already knowing when I'm going to visit that person, or if I'm going to go to that place, I'm going to drive past this station and I'm going to be able to eat this and that. And and you know, when you get to analyze your own habits, I laughed a little bit, and then probably I cried, because you realize how woven those habits are in your system. And at that point there was no way for me to being able to control it. And so this is just an example how I came to understand that one part is observing and understanding and getting to know the patterns that create those things in your life that you don't want anymore. And then there's time for action. What are you going to do? So as just to finish with my example, what I did is I just learned to drive completely other ways, because I could expect me to keep on going the same way and change my thought patterns, but that wasn't working. That wasn't working. There was still something somewhere that was just calling me, so to say. And so adding the action of changing the way that I was going to a certain place just really supported me in being able to truly transform. And so this is a very simple example that I am giving because I think that's going to speak to everyone. But there are so many ways where we know what we need to change because it's bad for us, but then we just keep on doing the things that bring us back to those patterns.
Okay, okay, and that's really interesting to your way of looking at things of how to being addicted with chocolates and that you give sugar items which you had the cravings for, and that is actually impacting your body weight. So you want to make a change. Your purpose was to change your body weight and your identity, and you made that as a purpose. And so to achieve that purpose, then you wanted to avoid those cravings. So you change the path or the direction of your driving direction. That makes sense actually. So you are not actually getting the victim of, oh, I'm looking at that, I'm craving, I wanted to go and reach out the chocolate, but just I don't even see the chocolate in my way. I just have a path where you maybe sceneries or natural. Okay, that makes sense. And so applying that thing, and if someone, more of my clients are having this nervous system dysregulation, burnout, and chronic illnesses. More prominently, I work with people with chronic respiratory disease, mental health challenges, and that, and other things. So, thinking your example, Ghislaine, there about avoiding that craving of chocolate. People here have lots of cravings, majorly chronic respiratory disease, of smoking is a craving, and some of them alcohol with the mental health burnout and other things, which is impacting their lung and both all the overall body. And many other cravings, like even sugar, for example, for people with mental health, anxiety, depression. Looking at your important program, what you do, Wheel of Expansion, I want to jump into that one. And take us through a journey. If someone is actually signing up to your program of Wheel of Expansion, what does that Wheel of Expansion itself mean? Is it that expansion? And also, I'm just correlating because I've not been in your program, but I'm really curious of the work, what you do, and also to bring out to the world what you offer to them. Looking at your title of Living Unmuted and also your program of Wheel of Expansion, and you talking about movement to listen, movement to transform. So I'm just connecting those dots together. And what is one is going to really expect from you, and what is that they're going to get out of your program, Wheel of Expansion? So if you could explain that to us. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this question. And I love actually how you mentioned how you brought all those elements together. It's beautiful to get this reflection because it allows me to look also from your eyes and your point of view at my work. So that's amazing. Thank you. So the wheel of expansion, the wheel stands for our life, and expansion stands for a practical, structured way to being able to expand in our life.
Mhm.
So the wheel is built up from it's 6 different segments, and each segment represents one of the aspects of our life. So health, work, company, relationship, whichever your life is filled with. And it's a system where I combine the classical wheel of life concepts. I don't know if that's maybe something that you've heard about,
Yeah.
but the wheel of life is something that is curated and created from the mind, only the brain. It's what are your goals in each segment of your life. And what I created with the wheel of expansion is I wanted to create something where my clients would be allowed to go deeper. Not only what does my mind want, and which is also really related to my own personal process, is it's not only what my mind wants, what does life dictate me that my relationship should look like in a year's time, but what is it that my heart desires? So what is the combination? Because we can't do without the mind and we can't do without the heart. The heart shouldn't be only leading and the mind shouldn't only be leading. So it's a merging of both, where you look at your life areas, which goals do you have, what do you wish to achieve, and then you sink into your heart. What is truly there? What does it mean for my being, for the person that I am, to desire a company that earns so much or so much, or to have 50 clients in 1 month? Or what does it mean for my heart and for my being when my relationship is at this stage? Because when we think about our lives strictly from the mind, from the brain, we completely cut off the rest of our system. We're not only a head, we're not only a heart. So when you can't just live your life from the mind or just live your life from the heart, because it seems like there are two streams in the world. Or you are a person that is functioning from the brain, or you are a person that is functioning from the heart. When in truth, both are present in our system, both are present in our lives and in our bodies, which means to me, both should work together in order to create the life that we want, in order to bring us forwards in with our goals. So that's what the wheel of expansion is, and how we go at it is very practically. You choose the areas of your life, because who am I to decide your life should be this and this and this and this segment? If you're not a mother, I'm not a mother, I'm not going to have a part in there that has anything to do with my children. But I know you are a mother, so for you, motherhood is going to be very important in your life. So you choose your own segments. What is your life made of? What is it that you wanna create? And then there are 7 steps, and each steps are there's so the one step is going to be more from the mind, from your brain, from your cognitive thinking, and the next step is going to be more visualizing and landing into your system, and going into intuitive writing, for example, so that you can create a system that it can support you for the whole year in achieving your goals.
Okay, so that's an interesting concept, and thank you for sharing that. And what do you mean by wheel of expansion? What people can actually expect? And I heard you saying that is the 7 steps they have to go through to complete that. And what also was interesting to hear from you is you were mentioning about the mind and the heart and pointing at your heart and the thing. So we all know, as my community of people is more of also include scientific people and other things. So we all know heart doesn't have memory. Although like there is a brain heart axis, a brain lung axis, brain gut axis. So we have these axes, and the research is finding out now. So when to clarify to the whole audience group and to make things clear a bit, and for my understanding as well, when you point out heart, are you pointing out to the emotional intelligence, which is again it's a part of the brain? And so you're talking about the logical brain. If people are always thinking logically, it's not going to work. They have to have some emotional component in it. And is that, am I understanding it right? If you could clarify that.
Yes, I think there are many different ways of describing what we are talking about. Yes, the cognitive mind and the heart, the emotional mind. So I'm going to say, is that something? Yeah, emotional mind. Or also talking about your brain, your knowing, and your intuition. But also talking, for example, about masculine energy and feminine energy. So the masculine energy is the one that's going to want the structure to understand, which is going to be the mind. And the feminine energy is going to be more intuitive based, intuitive knowing, which is more going to be centered around the heart. And there are so many different ways of describing this. And yes, and I love it that you invited me in your community, because I know, yes, you function in a completely different way, which was very interesting when we did the podcast where you were a guest in my podcast. Is we speak about the same things in different ways. And I think what is very important is exactly what you and I are doing. We are co-creating, we are giving a space in each other's world for someone else's voice, which is speaking differently about the same thing. Because it's not about the mind world and the heart world going against each other, or the spiritual world and the scientific world going against each other. It's, and like I said, it's all in one body. It's one system. We are one. So why make this differentiation? And also, why this is better than this? It's just your truth, my truth, how we came to understand things, and how things work for us.
Sure, sure. Yeah, it actually reminds me of talking in your podcast when I was a guest on your podcast, talking about each emotion has this inflammatory markers increasing in the scientific world, is connecting the emotions to the inflammation, and you do work with people to understand, to witness their own emotions, and to reflect on that will lead to the transformation. Is your work all about? And I wanted to connect a bit of your learning yourself, yoga, and you're applying those teachings in your Living Unmuted, or the Wheel of Living Unmuted is a podcast, and Wheel of Expansion is your program, right? So you're applying that. Yoga is more into not only the roots are from Asia anyway, but the Western part has modified into more of a stretching exercises, and which is really not yoga. So I get so much frustrated and angry when I see that as the yoga being as a stretching exercise. So it's not. But so the main is about like connecting our body and our soul and our breath, which is actually the real messenger between that. And pausing happens when you're focusing on your breath rather than on your thoughts. And that's something which yoga teaches through. And I'm an Ayurveda specialist as well. So main part of Ayurveda is pranayama. It's the life force and other things. So with that being said, I'm just trying to connect and to give people more sense of this wheel of expansion work, which is very important to you and that you're offering to the group of people. When you're doing the 7 steps, are there, you mentioned about visualization, which I heard, lovely, you mentioning about that. And I believe so there's a component of journaling as well, getting to know people's own, what they're up to. Are you also focusing on the breath component in your work of Wheel of Expansion?
I love that you put the record straight on what is yoga. I did do a traineeship to become a yoga instructor, so I am certified. I'm by all means not knowing what yoga is in the definition, but I did learn that the position, the asanas, was not the main aspect of yoga. I learned about the yamas and the niyamas, and especially about breath work. So thank you very much for bringing that forward, because I think it's very important to put the record straight on that kind of knowledge. I do not have a component where we focus specifically on breath, because I'm not a breath work facilitator, but I do, whenever we do exercises and I guide my clients into connecting back to their body, there's always going to be a few moments of taking a breath, slowing the breath down, noticing what is happening in my system thanks to the breath. So the component is going to be there. That's actually, it's very interesting that you're bringing that forward. But there's not any breath work specifically using the breath to support one of the steps, which is a beautiful invitation. So
I already see that, Ghislaine, that you're using conscious breathing as a part of the work, because we all have more than 20,000 breaths unconsciously. We are breathing every day, over 20,000 every day. So for a person who's living 80 years, I don't know exactly how many number of days, but every day they are breathing 20,000 without any conscious awareness. But your work is actually helping people even for a minute or a moment to realize that, to transition between the steps. It's actually really using the breath as a tool as well in your thing, which I can clearly see, and it gives people as well a vision that you're using some parts of the, making them to realize their awareness of living on earth, which is conscious breathing. So that's very, very, thank you for that, and I'm happy to know that you're doing it as a part of your program. Now, I would like to move on to the next part after my interview with you as a guest. And I went back into your website and what you're doing and other things before coming in onto my podcast. I asked you a bio. And then I saw the word of leadership, yeah, on your website. And I was actually so interested the way you actually, the style and the font of the leadership. But the question is not about the website design or the content of it, but the word of leadership and how is actually it into your program, what you're offering. By word of leadership, I believe you don't refer to the title or position. And I believe that you are referring to something like embodied leadership. And what to me, it actually sounds like talking from your inner self and not from others' expectation. But I wanted to hear from your words what you really mean embodied leadership is, and how is that going to play out in people taking your program?
There are two concepts that are very important that are related to leadership. Well, one, the base is radical responsibility. I believe that we lead our life, we are the leaders of our lives when we take radical responsibility for everything that we do and everything that we are. So that's what my concept and my idea of leadership is. It's personal leadership. And it's woven into actually everything that we do, how we speak, how we walk, how we talk, how we treat others, how we treat ourselves, how we step forward into the world. Are we doing that from a reactive personality, or are we doing that from a proactive personality? So, do you know who you are? Do you know what your standards are? Do you know what your values are? And can you embody those standards and those values by owning them in everything that you do? And so this is also part of the wheel of expansion. For each areas of life, we look at what are your values, your standards, what are your non-negotiables. And the aspect of leadership is bringing those concepts and not keeping them only on the mind level. I know what my values are, but I can integrate them into my heart and into everything that I do. Because for me, the heart is the way we step forward. Can I integrate them and embody them and really step forward in a proactive way, knowing who I am, leading myself instead of being the victim of whatever happens to me? So, a very good example can be in traffic. I think everybody can relate. We all do.
Sorry, I didn't hear that one. So, what is that?
Oh, traffic. In
Traffic.
traffic.
Yeah.
I think everybody can relate. Where if you're walking, if you're driving a bike, or if you're driving a car, we all are part of traffic. And we all make mistakes in traffic. We all do. Little ones, big ones. And I'm in traffic, I tend to be very reactive. So my next spiritual awakening is being zen in traffic. I'm not there yet, but it's just to give an example. We know that there can always be situations where we will be inattentive. We will make small mistakes. How can we, instead of blaming the other for whatever is happening, can we just own the fact that mistakes happen and nothing bad happened? There's no accident, there's nothing really bad that emerged from this situation. Can we be the example of not getting angry for something that doesn't have any consequences? And I think traffic is the best example because so many things, little things, tend to happen when we are in traffic. And so this is what I mean with leadership. Can we lead ourselves into being the example of how we wish the whole world to be, based on our standards and on our values?
Okay, that's interesting, and thanks for actually clarifying that and sharing the perspective of what you mean by leadership in your work and how you see leadership as. One question related to that, again, the leadership is when you're applying this program, people are already actually in the guilt, shame, and fear, anxiety, and those are the people who are going to come to you. And they have hidden their inner voice, although, like, I strongly believe everyone is a leader and their leadership is inside them. And the styles might vary depending on their culture, the values, and the purpose. So when they are coming to you to take the program, how is this leadership concept, what you're talking to me about the traffic and forgive themselves for small mistakes? And that's what I'm getting. And because there's no large consequences, everyone is safe, everyone is alive, so don't worry. So that's what I'm getting the message from what you're talking. So how is that? The work is very challenging for you. So how is that you're going to do that to the people to make them realize their leadership when they are in the mess of their fear, anxiety, guilt, shame?
I think the first step is making people aware of what their values and standards are, and just maybe making a list of 10 non-negotiables. What are your non-negotiables? And just starting that mind shift where people learn to look in a look at what they do and how they want their world to be and their life to be shaped. I think that's one of the first steps that's really important. And then where I have a program which is called Le Salon, which is the French word for living room.
Oh,
Le
can you
Salon.
repeat that word again?
Yes,
What is
of
the French
course.
word?
Which is the, and then salon.
Le Salon.
Le Salon. Yes, this is the name of one of the programs that I have that is specifically for entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And what we do within those evenings, it's we come together once a month for 1.5 hours, and I introduce a theme. And based on those based on the theme of the evening, we look at 4 different aspects. So that's what's your position, what's the shadow that is around this theme,
Mhm.
and what is it where you want to be. And so each time there's a moment of reflection,
Mm.
inviting you to focus on where do I stand based on this theme? Who am I when I fully take ownership of this theme?
Mm.
And I think it's not that people don't want to be leaders of their lives or don't want to step forward. It's just we live in a world where there's so much coming our way. And we tend to take on the world instead of taking a step back, taking a deep breath, and then just really consciously making the choice, yes, this is for me, and no, this is not for me. So what I create with those evenings is I create a space where there is a lot of I create a container, actually, is maybe a better word. I create a container where there is a lot of space for the women that are participating in those evenings to reflect on one specific theme. And
Mm.
based on that, they are going to, there's a shift happening because there's nothing that I do. It's not about me teaching you anything or doing anything. It's about me creating a container, a space where I allow you to think about those things. This is the only thing that we need. We need support to create space for us. It's like if at the beginning of a meditation you don't tell someone to take a breath, probably they won't be conscious about it. When you do a visualization, if you don't offer the idea that someone can be in the woods, they're probably not going to think about it.
Mm. Mm. That's interesting. And thank you for sharing that. So, what I'm taking from what you're saying is like, when people are throwing at you and you take whatever you wanted. So you rather be a rock than a sponge. Yeah, a sponge is something observes everything, but a rock actually is strong and grounded in their own values. So before we lead others, to lead ourselves first with our values and purpose, Is that what? Okay, I got it. So I
Exactly.
hope that the audience is also getting that. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Exactly. And I would like to add, this is also where masculine and feminine energy come back together. We
Mm.
need to be able to hold ourselves to be the rock, to be the tree, or to be the Shiva, because this is how I learned about it, to be the Shiva for ourselves, so that Shakti, which is the playful feminine energy, can, go around and be creative and create. And yes, it's about having someone in our lives and, having both aspects in our life, but it's especially being able to hold this and entertain this for yourself.
Yeah, thank you, and that's well put together. And many people in the Hindu community would actually understand the Shiva concept of Shiva and Shakti. And myself being an Hindu, it makes more sense and clear. So the creative energy is something which you're igniting in people's life through your work, Wheel of Expansion. That's very
Yes.
good. Thank you very much. And it's a great work and a challenging work because not everyone will be in the space to be creative. And I think creative people are more intelligent as well. And the scientific proof is there and research is confirmed. And so it's not that I'm discounting that people who are not creative, not intelligent, they have other forms of intelligence. Intelligence is in different forms. And emotional intelligence, I appreciate a lot more valuable than just logical or just mathematical or other things. It's all about like understanding, as you actually mentioned about the word proactive, how you treat other people, becoming aware of sensing the environment and the people you're with, and always there is a saying that don't treat people the way you don't want to like to be treated. I would actually look at actually you have to treat people how they want to be treated, not how you want to be treated. Yeah, so it's something that we are most of the time applying around the concept, and a lot of relationships are going in a chaos, and based on that, whatever the relationship is. Not only I'm talking about the intimate, but also the personal or work relationship, whatever it is, with other people. Great. So, what I've actually also wanted to talk about your work and help people to understand how broader is your work to reach the communities. You talked about a lot of women and women leadership and other things, okay? And I'm not getting a sense from your website because we have known for very little time, only for a month's time. Myself being your podcast, you've been on my podcast now. What is that actually, the age groups and gender you focus when you say that you are delivering the Wheel of Expansion and leadership programs? And you gave an example of entrepreneurial thing which you do. I don't remember the French word what you mentioned. Can you come again with
Le
the French?
salon.
Le salo, yeah. So that work again. So what is that? Because I wanted this podcast to be very conversational. It is not scripted, and it's something which is true and honest. So would you tell us, like, what are the age groups and gender you offer your program to?
I have been up until now focusing mainly on women, women entrepreneurs. Le Salon is a space where I have different groups. There's maximum 8 women, and I did choose to keep only women or men in the groups because that creates a specific sense of safety to go into that aspect of leadership. So that's specifically for the salon. I haven't had any men sign up yet, but also probably because I really speak towards women mainly. The
Mm-hmm.
wheels of expansion is open to everybody. And actually, I like when I do my workshop, I have a workshop coming up on the 5th of September for the Wheel of Expansion. And I actually like a live workshop, not online. I work a lot online, and this one is going to be live. I like to have a good combination between men and women because it creates a very different sort kind of energy. So depending on what I want to create with the events, the workshops, or the programs that I have, I will focus on mainly men or mainly women. Generally speaking, I work mostly with women because I believe that we are at a time in the in the evolution of our society and of humankind where it is very important for women to step forward in a very powerful way. So we, the generations before us, fought for their rights, which gave us tremendous opportunities, and I'm very thankful for. And I also believe it is time for us to lean back into the true nature of femininity. Feminine nature is not a nature that fights. It's a nature that initiates based on her unique energy system, which is surrendering, allowing, opening, leading from the heart. And that just asks for a different kind of energy. So, and I believe there are too many women that live in fear, that live in shame. I've heard you mention the word shame a few times during our conversation. And because there is so much shame around so many of the things is that are being a woman, I believe that I am leading. So we are leading each other. We are bringing each other home, like Ramdas used to say. And in that aspect, I can show a part of the way. So that's why for most of my programs, I focus on women.
Thank you, Jocelyn, for that beautiful explanation, and also getting us know that your live workshop, you mean like in-person workshop. People are coming to you. Yeah. So you're going to focus on both gender and other things. Thank you for that. Finally, I would like to ask you one thing. For people, you also mentioned that I mentioned several times the word shame, because I deal with people with chronic respiratory disease. They live in shame and guilt a lot. And also, not only because of their smoking behavior, but also because of the symptoms. If they get breathless, what other people think in the public. If they're actually coughing in the public, what other people think. Because when someone coughs, when you're going into the shop, you will not go near them. Okay, so you're going to go bypass them, and that is actually giving them the message that you're going to avoid them. And there is a reason for both the goodness of both of us, like not spreading the infection, but it is actually, when you talk about the emotional content of it, it is a shame they're getting from that, and the guilt and other things. So for people who are having the chronic illnesses, not only chronic respiratory, but many illnesses have different shames in them and the guilt in them. And people who are caregiving, or people who have traumas in the past, and people are not putting themselves first. What is one simple practice that they can take from this podcast, if they are listening, to connect with them inner self and speak their truth and living from their own truth, not from others' expectations?
Ooh, that's a very interesting, a very interesting question. I believe that it all starts with knowing yourself. And so the practice would be, if or when a situation occurs that you feel shame, pause for a second and just feel in, where does that shame come from? Is it truly yours? Is it truly something that is yours to carry? Or is it inherited? Is it a reflection, like inherited from epigenetics? Did you learn to be ashamed of a situation? Is it something that belongs to the other person that is standing in front of you? So just pausing for a second. So the practice would be, whenever you feel that shame, pause for a second and just feel into it. Is it yours? Is it truly yours? Or is it someone else's? If you notice it's yours, that's your responsibility to take, and learn to hold it so it doesn't feel shameful anymore. And if it's the other, family dynamics, for example, give it back to whomever it belongs to.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So it's basically, you're talking about moments of reflection and moments of listening to themselves and witness their own kind of, whether who's the reason for that shame, and taking that radical responsibilities, in your own words, of radical responsibility to lead their life with truth. Thank you for that. Finally, in terms of the whole process of wheel of expansion tied with the 7 steps and other things, how long one can expect to be having that program? Is it like a weeks and weeks, or is it like a one-off program? Or
So you can create your wheel of expansion in, I would take 2 days in order to be able to really dive into the parts, but creating the wheel is going to be in one moment. And then you can work with it the whole year. So I offer workshops where we create your wheel. And then if you want, I can support you for 3 months, 6 months, or a whole year, depending on what you want. I do not believe in one size fits all. So it's really depending on what the other person is wanting to be supported with. Everybody is also in different stages in how much time they can and want to spend on that kind of things. So creating the wheel can be like quite a fast process in one day. If you're really focused, going to be tiring, but if you're really focused, we can create a wheel in one day. And then and then it's a support system for a whole year. So every month, go back at it and look for yourself where you are at.
okay, this is based in Netherlands, or is it like so many?
It's based in the Netherlands, but I do most of my work online. I love being online. I love being able to support people all over the world. And I think it's a wonderful tool. We live in 2026, so let's Zoom with everybody.
Okay, and then the COVID has actually changed our mind to make Zoom easier as a tool of communication, Zoom or Teams. Yeah, thank you for that, Ghislaine, and thank you for sharing all your wisdom and your journey with us and being honest with you in the conversation and what you offer to people. I think you're doing a great job there and holding that space for people to become more authentic and speaking their own truth and not living based on others' expectation. And I hope that your work reaches many communities and make changes in their lives. And if you would like to add some final words, be great.
Yes, I would love to thank you, Devi, for having me and for creating a space where I could speak freely and share my wisdom and my thoughts. I think that we have beautiful conversation where we hopefully can inspire a lot of people. So thank you very much for this space.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us. If this conversation resonated with you, please do share it with someone who might need to hear it. You can find all Gislaine's details and ways to connect with her in the description box below. Until next time, take gentle care of yourself, keep breathing, and remember that even the smallest moment of listening to yourself can be the beginning of something profoundly transformational. Take care. See you in my next podcast.